As Tania would tell it, her struggle for survival inside the South Tower on 9/11 was brutal. She crawled through the flames and dense smoke, driven by sheer instinct and the overwhelming will to live. She recounted how she navigated through the compromised structure of the building, facing unimaginable peril as she moved through the chaos. She also stated having sustained severe burns during her escape, portraying these injuries as a testament to the life-and-death ordeal she faced. Tania Head's narrative of survival during the September 11th attacks was one that captured the collective imagination and sympathy of the nation. She recounted her story with vivid, harrowing details that plunged listeners into the heart of one of the most tragic events in American history. According to Tania, her ordeal began on an ordinary morning that swiftly turned into a nightmare. She described her presence on the 78th floor of the South Tower, a place of business and life that was about to become a scene of unprecedented horror. As she narrated her story, Tania brought listeners into the South Tower's corridors, painting a vivid scene of the moment when United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the building. The impact was not just a jolt, it was the beginning of an unimaginable catastrophe. She spoke of the building quaking, the terrifying sounds of destruction, and the confusion and fear that enveloped everyone around her. Tania's account detailed how the once stable structure turned into a trap, with flames and smoke rapidly transforming the office space into a perilous maze of danger. In the tapestry of Tania Head's narrative, threads of profound personal loss intertwined with acts of heroism and humanity, creating a story that deeply resonated with the public and fellow survivors. Central to her tale was the figure of her fiancé, Dave, whose presence in her life story added a layer of intimate tragedy. Tania claimed that Dave was in the North Tower when the unthinkable happened, becoming one of the many souls lost in the catastrophe. Her portrayal of this loss was not merely a recounting of an event. It was an evocation of the shared heartbreak that the nation felt, a personal connection to the collective grief that enveloped the country in the wake of the attacks. But Tania's narrative didn't stop at personal tragedy. It was imbued with moments of profound human connection and the passing of legacies in the face of imminent death. She recounted an encounter that seemed to capture the essence of humanity amidst the chaos. A dying man, in his last moments amidst the rubble and ruin, handing her his wedding ring. This act, as Tania described it, was a trust bestowed upon her, making her a custodian of love, memories, and final wishes. It was a testament to the bonds that hold, even when the physical world is falling apart, a poignant reminder of the enduring human spirit. Yet, perhaps the most riveting part of her account was her claimed interaction with Welles Crowther, the man immortalized as the man in the red bandana. Crowther, a figure of valor and sacrifice, became known for his selfless acts of heroism during the tragedy, saving at least a dozen lives. Tania positioned herself as one of the individuals whose life was touched by Crowther's bravery. She narrated how, in her most desperate moment, it was Crowther who came to her aid, guiding her to safety through the smoke and debris. This association with Crowther served not only to heighten the drama of her story, but also to connect her narrative to the broader tapestry of heroism and sacrifice that emerged from the tragedy. Tania's inclusion of these elements in her story, the loss of her fiancé, the poignant exchange of the wedding ring, and the heroic intervention of Welles Crowther, added layers of depth and complexity to her account. These details served to anchor her personal story in the larger narrative of 9/11, intertwining her experience with the collective experience of loss, resilience, and heroism that the attacks engendered. It was a narrative that, at the time, offered solace and connection, a story that, through its portrayal of profound personal loss and encounters with selflessness and bravery, resonated deeply with those who were grappling with the tragedy's aftermath. In weaving this intricate narrative, Tania Head crafted a story that extended beyond the mere fact of survival. It was a narrative rich in emotion, imbued with the themes of love, loss, and heroism that define so much of the human experience. Through her words, Tania offered a story that was, in its telling, a reflection of the broader human story that unfolded on that fateful day in September. However, appearances were deceiving, and Tania's legacy would ultimately be remembered for reasons far more notorious than the tales she spun. Tania's narrative extended beyond the immediate horror of the attack. She painted a picture of a survivor who, despite her own suffering, was acutely aware of the collective tragedy unfolding around her. She portrayed herself as a witness to the best and worst of humanity, observing acts of bravery and scenes of despair. Her story was not just about surviving. It was about witnessing the profound impact of the tragedy on the people and the city she claimed to have been a part of. Her vivid recounting of the events on that fateful day in September resonated deeply with those who heard it, providing a personal, human perspective on a national tragedy. Her story, as she told it, was not just a tale of survival, but a chronicle of resilience, a narrative that, for a time, offered a glimpse into the heart of one of the darkest days in recent memory. In the aftermath of the attacks, Tania Head's account of survival became a cornerstone of inspiration and unity for a community grappling with an unprecedented catastrophe. Her story was not just a personal testament to endurance, but also a beacon that guided many towards finding solace in togetherness and strength in shared experiences. Her deep involvement in the World Trade Center Survivors Network, culminating in her election to the presidency in 2004, stood as a testament to her unwavering commitment and the profound impact she had within the community. Tania's ascent to the presidency of the network was not merely a result of her compelling narrative of survival. It was her empathetic engagement with fellow survivors that marked her as a figure of influence and trust. As president, she took on the mantle of leadership with a vision to not only provide a platform for shared grief, but also to transform the network into a springboard for collective healing and mutual support. Her leadership was characterized by a proactive approach to addressing the complex emotional, psychological, and physical needs of the survivors. Under her stewardship, the network expanded its outreach, providing a comprehensive framework of support that catered to the diverse needs of its members. Tania's story, rich in vivid recollections and emotional depth, resonated deeply with those who found in her a kindred spirit. Her narrative of escaping the South Tower, overcoming unimaginable obstacles, and enduring personal loss struck a chord with many who sought understanding and compassion amidst their own turmoil. Her ability to articulate the ordeal with such intensity and detail provided a cathartic outlet for many survivors, offering them a voice and a reflection of their own experiences. Moreover, Tania's active participation in public events, media interactions, and her role as a spokesperson for the Survivors Network significantly elevated the visibility of the community's plight. She became a bridge between the survivors and the wider public, bringing to the forefront the enduring impact of the attacks and the importance of acknowledging and addressing the long-term consequences faced by those directly affected. However, Tania's narrative was more than just a recounting of events. It was a narrative woven with a sense of purpose and a call to action. She advocated tirelessly for policies and programs that recognized and addressed the unique challenges faced by 9/11 survivors. Her commitment went beyond the confines of the network as she engaged with policymakers, stakeholders, and the broader community to champion the cause of survivors and ensure that their voices were heard and their needs met. In her role as president of the network, Tania was instrumental in organizing events, memorials, and support sessions that fostered a sense of community and collective identity among the survivors. She understood the power of unity and the strength that comes from shared experiences and mutual support. Her initiatives often focused on not just coping with the past, but also on building resilience and hope for the future. While Tania's account of her experience during the attacks was compelling and evocative, it was a narrative that would later be scrutinized and questioned. Nonetheless, she championed more comprehensive assistance and resources, expanding the network's support scope and depth. This activism led to speaking engagements and leadership roles, where she shared her story and championed survivors' needs, becoming a familiar face in the media and bringing attention to the attack's enduring impact. There was no denying the significant role Tania played in the network during her tenure. Her story, a story that the world would soon learn was fabricated, compelled a community to rally around the values of empathy, resilience, and collective healing. It served as a catalyst for action, galvanizing survivors and the broader community to acknowledge, address, and advocate for the needs of those who had endured one of the darkest days in recent history. In this way, Tania's involvement, while controversial, undeniably shaped the trajectory of the World Trade Center Survivors Network and left an indelible mark on the narrative of 9/11 survival and resilience. Despite her activism, skepticism continued to grow. Tania's reluctance to provide irrefutable evidence or detailed corroborations regarding her relationship with Dave, her employment history, and her very presence in the South Tower during the attacks only served to amplify the growing suspicions. The once cohesive story she narrated started to appear more like a house of cards, vulnerable to the slightest probe of inquiry. This burgeoning skepticism reached a tipping point when the New York Times, in its commitment to investigative journalism, took a deep dive into Tania's background as part of a reflective piece marking the 5th anniversary of the attacks. The resulting investigation brought to light a series of unsettling inconsistencies that cast a long shadow over the veracity of her entire narrative. The esteemed financial institution Merrill Lynch, where Tania claimed to have been employed, had no record of her, nor were there any offices in the South Tower where she claimed to have faced her ordeal. Moreover, her alleged academic achievements, which included credentials from prestigious institutions like Harvard and Stanford, were nowhere to be found in the annals of these universities. As the discrepancies mounted, the intricate story that Tania had so convincingly narrated began to disintegrate, revealing a starkly different reality from the one she had portrayed. The world was confronted with a revelation that was as shocking as it was disheartening. Tania Head was, in fact, Alicia Esteve, hailing from Barcelona, Spain. This woman, who had intricately woven herself into the fabric of the 9/11 survivors community, had no connection to the tragic events of that day. Her narrative, once a beacon of resilience and a source of solace, was nothing more than an elaborate ruse. The exposure of Tania's true identity and the subsequent unraveling of her fabricated story sent shockwaves through the community she had claimed to be a part of. Her tale of survival and loss, which had resonated so deeply with those who had lived through the horrors of 9/11, was revealed to be a product of deception. The sense of betrayal was profound, not just because of the emotional investment many had placed in her story, but because it trivialized the real experiences of genuine survivors. In the wake of this revelation, Tania Head, or Alicia Esteve, retreated from the public eye, her legacy forever tarnished by the scandal. The narrative she had crafted, once a narrative of triumph over adversity, was now a cautionary tale about the depths of human deception. Her story, which had once inspired and united, now served as a stark reminder of the complexities and vulnerabilities of collective memory and the need for vigilance in the face of seemingly compelling narratives. The revelation of Tania Head's deceit sent shockwaves through the 9/11 survivors community, a collective that had already endured unimaginable trauma and loss. Tania, who had established herself as a central figure within this community, had woven a narrative of personal tragedy and survival that resonated deeply with fellow survivors. Her story was not just a tale of her own survival, but had become a symbol of collective resilience and shared experience. However, the exposure of her fabricated identity and the subsequent unraveling of her narrative had far-reaching implications, leaving a lasting imprint on the psyche of the community she had once claimed to be a part of. The psychological impact of Tania's deception was multifaceted and profound. For individuals who had survived the attacks, Tania's story and her active participation in the Survivors Network had offered a sense of understanding and shared experience. Her fabricated accounts of loss and survival provided a space for connection and solidarity. However, the revelation that her narrative was built on falsehoods shattered this sense of community and trust. For many, it felt like reliving the trauma of the attacks, as the betrayal reopened emotional wounds and called into question the authenticity of their shared experiences. The sense of betrayal was intensified by the intimacy of the connections formed within the Survivors Network. Tania had not only shared her story, but had also been a confidant to others, a shoulder to lean on, and a supposed survivor who had offered empathy and support. Her position as the president of the network amplified the impact of her deceit. The realization that her empathy and shared experiences were based on a lie undermined the very foundation of trust and mutual support that the community was built upon. Moreover, the psychological impact extended beyond feelings of betrayal. The exposure of Tania's deceit raised unsettling questions about the nature of truth and memory in the context of collective trauma. Survivors were left to grapple with the uncertainty of their own narratives, as the incident highlighted the vulnerability of personal and collective memories, especially in the aftermath of a tragedy of such magnitude. The revelation also had broader implications for the public perception of the survivors' community. Tania's high-profile media presence and her role as a spokesperson for the group had placed her at the forefront of the narrative surrounding the 9/11 attacks. The unraveling of her story threatened to overshadow the real experiences and struggles of genuine survivors, casting a shadow of doubt and skepticism over their accounts. In the wake of the scandal, the survivors' community faced the challenge of rebuilding trust, not only within their own circles, but also in their interactions with the broader public. The process of healing and regaining a sense of community required confronting the painful reality of Tania's betrayal, reassessing the dynamics of their network, and finding ways to protect and validate the genuine experiences of survivors. Despite the deep sense of betrayal and the psychological turmoil it caused, the resilience of the 9/11 survivors community shone through. The incident served as a stark reminder of the complexity of human nature and the profound impact that deceit can have on a community bound by shared trauma. It also underscored the importance of compassion, understanding, and vigilance in nurturing and protecting spaces of mutual support and healing. As the dust settled, the community of survivors and the broader public were left to grapple with the implications of Tania's deceit. Her actions raised profound questions about trust, authenticity, and the ways in which stories of tragedy are constructed and consumed. The story of Tania Head, or Alicia Esteve, became a complex tapestry of deception, a narrative that, in its unraveling, offered a poignant reflection on the human capacity for both empathy and deceit. Even as Tania receded into the shadows, her fabricated narrative continued to cast a long shadow over one of history's most tragic days. Her tale, a blend of truth and fabrication, served as a sobering reminder of the delicate fabric of human experience and the importance of truth in the collective journey of healing and remembrance. As the years pass, the story of Tania Head, or Alicia Esteve, remains a poignant testament to the complexities of memory, identity, and the enduring quest for truth in the aftermath of tragedy. Join the conversation. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and insights. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating content. Thanks for tuning in to Really Unreal. Join us next time for another fascinating true crime story. Stay curious, stay connected, stay with Really Unreal.